Grey, the most powerful and bloodthirsty king in the world, dies suddenly in his mid-30s of no apparent cause. Floating in the abyss, a voice urges him to seek out the light. He suddenly awakens in an alternate world as newborn Arthur Leywin, first son of retired adventurers Reynolds and Alice. At first he is furious to be reduced to a helpless infant, but he soon discovers humans in this world use an unfamiliar power called magic. Determined to protect himself by gaining as much power as possible, Arthur takes any opportunity he can to learn, reading his parents' books in secret. He discovers his new home is the continent of Dicathan, which contains 3 kingdoms: Sapan, the nation of the humans, Darv, the underground nation of the dwarves, and Elenoir, the forest nation of the elves. Having been a master of Ki in his old world, Arthur practices magic at every opportunity and casts his first spell at only 2 years old, injuring Reynolds and destroying their house. Having never experienced family in his former life, he is confused at the feelings of guilt and realizes he has learned to love his parents and cries for the first time in either of his 2 lives. Arthur recalls when an emissary from another nation attempted to assassinate him, so he executed the man's family to spare them years of torture, and the emissary thanked him. Reynolds begins teaching Arthur the sword and is astounded Arthur is already a skilled swordsman. Realizing he and Alice aren't capable of training Arthur, they move to Zyro City to find him an instructor. For the journey, they hire their old party Twin Horns as bodyguards. Arthur learns Alice is an especially rare emitter mage who can use healing magic. Adam, Twin Horn's spearman, decides to test Arthur's abilities, which Arthur loses as he is unfamiliar fighting with such a small body. Jasmine, Twin Horn's scout, notices Arthur use Kai on his legs to increase his speed. After teaching her how, she gifts him a knife. They are attacked by bandits seeking Alice. Reynolds reveals Alice is pregnant. A bandit mage attacks and Arthur is thrown from a cliff, but uses Jasmine's knife to drag the mage with him to protect Alice and his future sibling. As he falls, he realizes he understands why the emissary thanked him, feeling he can die happy, knowing Alice will survive. Arthur awakens in the forest at the bottom of the cliff and is confronted by a terrible monster that greets him by name. The monster, named Sylvia, claims to be Arthur's ally and helps him recover. Afterwards, she shows Arthur he has been unconscious for days, and his parents were forced to continue their journey without him. More time passes, and while Arthur wants to leave, the forest is full of monsters, and Sylvia cannot leave her cave. Sylvia shows Arthur it is possible to use magic whilst absorbing more from the environment at the same time, allowing spells to be cast indefinitely. However, she refuses to teach him while evil lives within his heart. Eventually, Arthur realizes he cannot repeat his former life of hatred and violence and swears to protect others. Meanwhile, another monster identical to Sylvia searches for her. After much effort, Arthur learns Sylvia's ability. The second monster locates Sylvia, who quickly hides Arthur. Sylvia reveals her true form as a white dragon and temporarily freezes time. She reminds Arthur of his promise to help others and gives him a magic crystal, one of her feathers, and a tattoo similar to her own body markings. After an emotional goodbye where Arthur acknowledges her as his adoptive grandmother, she uses the last of her magic to teleport Arthur as close to his parents as she can, unfreezes time, and attacks the other monster with an explosion that collapses the cave. Arthur awakens alone in the forest and begins his journey to survive until he finds his parents. Almost immediately, Arthur witnesses slavers transporting a young elf girl. He takes down 3 slavers in ambush attacks, but their leader turns out to be a mage whom Arthur eventually kills after a difficult magical duel. For a moment, the girl reminds him of a woman he once knew. Arthur tries to send the girl to her home of Elenoir, but realizes she is too young to travel on her own, forcing him to try lead her there. He learns she is Tessia Aerolith, and that she wants to train as a mage when she is old enough. Arthur realizes one of the slavers' pet wolves is following them, so he makes sure to stay on guard. The trip starts to annoy him, since it is preventing him looking for his parents. He also begins to struggle with terrible pains from his mana core. During one such episode that leaves him immobile with pain, the wolf suddenly appears with food for them before leaving again. Arthur is confused, but Tessia is sure it is thanking them for setting it free. They eventually reach a teleportation portal Tessia recognizes as a gateway to Elenoir and quickly pulls him inside. Before Arthur can do anything, he is grabbed by elven soldiers while the suddenly uncaring Tessia watches. Tessia suddenly asks the soldiers to stop, but they plan to execute him. They are stopped by Tessia's grandfather Virion, the retired elven king, causing Arthur to realize Tessia is a princess. Her parents, King Alduin and Queen Mariel, demand Arthur be arrested, but Tessia simply shouts at them until they relent. Arthur remains confused why Tessia showed such hostility towards him when they first arrived. At the castle, he explains being separated from his parents and rescuing Tessia from the slavers, though he does not mention Sylvia. Arthur asks to be returned to Sapin, though Alduin explains the only portal to Sapin can't be opened for another 5 years, so after some more pressure from Tessia, he agrees to have guards escort Arthur on foot. Tessia snaps him out of his sudden depression, and he realizes he was being foolish. Virion appears and requests a duel, as he is interested in how Arthur defeated the slavers alone. Arthur wins, so Virion stubbornly requests a second duel, until Tessia scolds him for bullying. Virion offers to make Arthur his apprentice, as he has determined the pain in Arthur's mana core comes from having acquired the will of a beast, and if he doesn't train to use it, he will die. In his dreams, Arthur experiences the pain from his core as a shadowy monster. Virion decides to take Arthur to visit his old friend. He also warns Arthur that as heir to the throne, Tessia has often been manipulated by people pretending to be her friend, so Arthur must be very special to her if she trusts him. Virion's friend is the elven sorceress Rinia Darkassan, a diviner who can sense both the past and the future. With her help, Arthur is able to send a psychic message to his thrilled parents telling them he is all right and will join them in Zyros once his illness is cured. Determined to see them again, Arthur agrees to become Virion's apprentice. Tessia insists on showing Arthur around Elenoir, but are confronted by several children Tessia knows, including Faerith Ivsar, one of the fake friends Virion mentioned. Angry Tessia prefers Arthur over him. Faerith challenges Arthur to a duel. Since refusing would dishonor Virion, Arthur accepts and knocks Faerith unconscious with one punch. The next day, Arthur starts his beast tamer training with Virion, determined to master everything Virion can teach him. 3 years later, Arthur and Tessia have grown up and become more powerful with their abilities. Virion reveals Arthur cannot use sorcery as the beast will disrupt the balance between his body and his core. After 3 years of training, Virion decides it is time to awaken the beast will. However, awakening beast will causes an explosion of magic, and Arthur is forced to admit his beast will came from a dragon. Virion reveals Arthur should be able to leave Elenoir as the Sapin portal is being opened 2 years early for a massive cultural exchange between the elves, dwarves, and humans. That night, the crystal Arthur got from Sylvia hatches an infant black dragon, which accepts him as her father. Arthur names her Sylvie. Virion deduces awakening his beast will caused Sylvie to hatch. Arthur encounters Faerith for the first time since their duel. It transpires Faerith actually wanted to be Arthur's friend. Tessia is sad. Many children like Faerith are taking part in the cultural exchange, but she cannot go due to security risks. Virion gives Arthur a compass with the Elenoir royal seal, allowing him to visit Elenoir whenever he wants. Tessia almost misses her chance to say goodbye before Arthur departs. Arthur reaches Zyros, the flying city built on a floating island, and heads for his parents' new home, where he meets his little sister Elenoir. Arthur relates the story of his absence to his thrilled parents, except for Sylvia, whom he keeps secret. Reynolds, who now works security at an auction house, is curious about Arthur's power, which is almost equal to his at such a young age. They are visited by Reynolds' boss, Vincent Halstea, his wife Tabitha, and daughter Lilia. Vincent is astounded by Arthur's power, which easily surpasses the 12-year-old students from the Zyros Magic Academy. Reynolds requests a practice duel using his fire magic, but Arthur fights him to a stalemate using advanced fire magic and water magic. As it is exceedingly rare to control more than one element, Vincent suggests Arthur be enrolled at Zyros Academy, even offering to pay the fees himself and ensure he be accepted despite only being 8 years old. Lilia introduces Arthur to the servants, who reveal Lilia often worries about her future, since her parents are desperately hoping she will awaken a mana core and become a successful mage. The next morning, Arthur is visited by twin horns who are all glad to see him, especially Jasmine, who regrets she couldn't stop Arthur falling off the cliff. Seeing them makes Arthur curious about the adventurer life, which would allow him to visit the other kingdoms. While shopping, Arthur feels a presence from a store selling extracted beast cores. Lilia has long desired one as they sometimes contain beast wills, but her parents consider this cheating when she should be focused on awakening her own core. Lilia sneaks away to another store to secretly buy a cheap core. Arthur tries to dissuade her in case it doesn't work, and their argument disturbs boys from the academy. A fight almost occurs, but the boys leave after realizing Lilia is Vincent's daughter, a financial donor to the academy. Vincent assures Arthur the fight won't affect his entry to the academy. Lilia becomes upset, feeling Vincent is only sending Arthur as a substitute for her, since she can't use magic. Later, she apologizes to Arthur for her jealousy. Deciding to help, Arthur pretends to have sent Lilia to Elenoir for training. At first, Vincent and Tabitha are furious, but soon realize they pressured Lilia unfairly. Lilia reveals she never actually left. She just wanted them to understand. Vincent apologizes and promises to support Lilia whatever future she chooses. Lilia decides for herself to attend the academy, so Arthur uses Virian's technique to forcibly awaken the dormant cores in both Lilia and Elenoir. Vincent throws a party to celebrate. Meanwhile, a sinister man takes an interest in Vincent's auction house. Vincent hosts an auction attended by King Blaine, who purchases a world lion cub for his son Prince Curtis to be his mana beast partner. Sebastian, the king's magician, selfishly demands Arthur give him Sylvie to serve as his partner. When Arthur refuses, Sebastian threatens his family, angering Arthur until his bloodlust damages the entire building. Unaware it was Arthur, Blaine assumes it was a magical assassin and punishes Reynolds for his poor security. Sebastian suggests surrendering Sylvie as an appropriate punishment, but Arthur refuses, standing up to Blaine directly. Blaine's knights seize Arthur, but he defeats them. He then freezes time except for Sebastian, and after breaking his leg, he terrifies him with his beast core, which takes the shape of Sylvia. The next day, Blaine sends a messenger to apologize and assures that the knights have been fired, as has Sebastian, who was rambling about Arthur breaking his leg despite being across the room. Blaine also sends gold as a bribe, implying he could still punish Reynolds if the bribe is refused. Reynolds lets Arthur have the gold for his future. Arthur, however, is displeased with how it ended and decides to attend the academy and learn how to utilize Sylvie as his partner. There, he meets a mysterious woman. The woman, Director Goodsky, duels Arthur and wins, but senses his potential. Arthur agrees to learn from her if she extends protections to his family. He also defers his enrollment until he is the appropriate age, planning to spend 3 years as an adventurer first. Alice agrees as long as he comes home every few months, while Reynolds insists he have an experienced adventurer supporting him, which Jasmine volunteers for. Arthur goes to buy a sword from Vincent, but is disappointed by the options. Sylvie locates a heavy iron staff that turns out to be a sword that can only be drawn when infused with magic. The sword, inscribed with Dawn's ballad WK4, magically shrinks until it is the ideal size for his hand. Believing the sword to be a magic artifact, Arthur purchases a much cheaper sword for appearance's sake, and since Vincent believes it is just a cheap iron staff, receives the magic sword for free as a disposable practice weapon. Weeks later, on his 9th birthday, Arthur receives a healing magic glove from Alice, as well as a ring that will warn Alice if he is in mortal danger, and a single-use scroll for sending an emergency message. His preparations complete, he says goodbye to his parents and departs with Jasmine. Jasmine takes Arthur to the Adventurers Guild to obtain a license from Guildmaster Caspian Bladeheart, who informs Jasmine her father has been looking for her. Arthur chooses to register under the alias Note. During the exam, Arthur witnesses an arrogant young half-elf named Lucas attempt a cowardly sneak attack on the examiner, which Arthur prevents, and Lucas is only granted a B rank. Caspian administers Arthur's exam himself and deems him to be B rank. Guild officials are suspicious. So many children are registering and attaining B rank straight away. Caspian is not surprised, since the recent cultural exchange resulted in guilds lifting the ban on elves and dwarves. Lucas's mother was an elf slave while his father was her owner, Lord Wykes, who desired a sorcerer's son. Also of note was Elijah Knight, a human raised by dwarf parents. Jasmine takes Arthur for training in a low-danger area, but while there, an escaped boar monster goes on a rampage. Arthur's past self suddenly warns him to be patient and wait for the right moment, which Arthur does, resulting in him slaying the boar. Jasmine reveals she became an adventurer to escape her family, the Flamesworths, most of whom rejected her anyway when she turned out not to have the family's trademark fire magic. Meanwhile, Tessia watches Arthur through a crystal ball and is upset to see him with yet another woman. 2 years later, Arthur has become famous as Note the Masked Swordsman.